two part of your lecture. Okay, so for monitoring and control, there will be two part of your lecture. The first would be on the theoretical part of what is monitoring, what is control, what is basically the common terms used in monitoring and control. Okay, and and also the introduction to S-curve. Okay, so how you would actually come up with an S-curve. And the second part will be on the earned value. Okay, so earned value analysis, one of the tools or approach that we use to represent our current performance. Okay, so it's one of the way we actually portray our performance. So let me just share. Hold on, eh? Okay. All right. So basically, earn value will be the second part, okay, of the monitoring and control topic. Okay. So let's move on straight to earn value management. So it is stated here that it is the best project control technique. I wouldn't say the best, okay, but it's one of the way that we can actually portray the cost factor and also the time factor. As most of the time, if you look into the common S-curve, okay, so commonly on the side, okay, so it is shown as, for example, this would be the plan. Okay, so we have the plan and we have the actual. So for example, we are monitoring from, let's say, week 3, for example. So this would show deviation. Okay, so somehow we have only one graph to represent our progress. Okay, so the question is, are we representing the time factor or are we representing the cost factor? Okay, so commonly it depends. So some project, okay, so some project will portray their S-curve as the cost that have been spent, because over a certain period of time, that is the amount of material, that is the amount of cost budgeted for the project. Okay, so for example, month 1, you have been allocated 20,000 so that your work could be completed. Let's say that governs 20,000. Okay, so for month 1, the budget has been allocated 20,000. If I spend 20,000, does it show my progress the same? Okay, so that's why sometimes when you have only one graph, okay, so as such, that graph, is it shows the cost expenditure or does it show the progress? So that it needs to go back to the organization. But okay, so that goes back to the organization. So meaning to say that having only representing one graph, okay, either to represent the cost spent or the progress, it is insufficient. Okay, but that is what we are currently doing. So but some of them not only showing the cost, okay, so they might be showing the time. Cuma one graph ni, what does it show? Is it showing our progress? And how is it showing our progress? Is it showing the whatever has been done physically on site, or is it showing the cost we have spent? That cost means that much of performance has been done. Okay, so that's why earn value came into picture. Okay, so earn value actually represents in two variables. So N value basically gives you representing in time performance and also cost performance. Okay, so it does not be your graph does not only show how much cost that you have spent or how over budget or under budget you are, or it does not only show the time performance, whether you have on time, okay, ahead of time or behind time. It can show both. But the current one we have, the common one on the side, it only shows one graph. Okay, so you need to get to the person who actually prepared this graph. What does it mean? Does it mean how the graph has been derived? Okay, is it derived purely on the cost? Okay, as what we have actually done in the last class. So that was purely on the cost, or actually we consider also the performance. Okay, so I think coming back to once you have done the S-curve next tomorrow. Okay, so once you are done the S-curve tomorrow, then we can actually discuss on that as well. Okay, but for time being, basically when we are talking about earn value, there are two descriptions to it. Okay, so there are two performance that we can look from it, which is the time factor and also the cost factor. Okay, so it was developed around 40 years ago. Okay, so okay, that's fine. Okay, so what it can do, it can actually assess cost performance and also schedule performance together, which was not previously done as much. Okay. Okay, so the main value of earn value is that it allows you to measure, track both schedule and cost performance together. Okay, so evaluating project performance on just one of these indicators does not show you the true picture. Okay, so as I've mentioned earlier, okay, so if you're just trying to show one graph, okay, so what does that graph means? Does it means the cost factor or does it mean the time factor? But it does not reflect both. Okay, so that is one of the current constraints that you actually represent if you only represent it in one variable. Okay, so evaluating project performance on just one indicator does not show you the true color. Okay, and does not allow you to detect the variance early. And each work package has a planned value. Okay, so the initial S-curve drawn from the contract sum, that would be the planned value. That would be the value of the work that you have actually allocated based on the network, based on the contract sum for each of the activity. So because you have arranged those Gantt chart, okay, so if you can recall when we are trying to create this S-curve, we started from the network. Okay, so your network analysis with the earliest start time, with the earliest finish time will be transferred into a Gantt chart form. Okay, so from the Gantt chart, you have actually looked into the cost factor for each of the activity. Okay, so your cost factor is taken from the contract document. So you have the specification for each of the activities. So you will divide equally based on the days or based on the week. Okay, so then you can see every day or every week how much sum has been allocated for all the combining activities. Okay, so that is where you actually come up with the S-curve. So hence, it is based on a planned value. You have already planned the activity as such, and what is the accommodating cost for it. Okay, so the planned value of any work package is the budgeted cost of the work scheduled. Okay, so to complete the work package. So the important point here is estimate the cost for each of the work package in your schedule. Also, this means the project has a baseline schedule and baseline budget. Okay, so at any point, the project has an earned value. Okay, so planned value, earned value is different. Okay, planned value is the value that you have actually attained from the specification, from the BQ too. Okay, so from your bill of quantity, each of the activities, how much does it cost? Earned value is the value of the work that you have earned. Okay, so the earned value is the budgeted cost of the work actually completed. Okay, so in other words, how many work package or parcel work have been completed at this time? So the value is expressed in budgeted cost term, not actual cost. Okay, so this allows you to perform cost analysis by comparing budget. Okay, so hold on. Okay, so let's try to take an example, yeah. Okay, so for example, you have okay, you have activity, and then you have the okay, let's say the Gantt chart. Okay, so let's say okay, let's say this is let's say 0. 50, 60, 30, 20. $50, $110, $140, $160. Okay, so let's say we are coming out with a simple S-curve. Okay, so this will be an S-curve based on 3 activities. Okay, so activity A, activity B, activity C. And let's say you have created this Gantt chart. Okay, so based on the earliest start time and earliest finish time for each of the activity. Okay, so imagine that you can see the activity A starts 0, the earliest finish is by 2. Activity B starts earliest finish is 1, completed by 3. And activity C, the earliest start time 2, earliest finish will be 4. Okay, so let's say this has been attained from the network diagram, for example. Okay, and the budgeted cost for activity A is basically 100 ringgit, activity B 20 ringgit, and activity C 40 ringgit. Okay, so what we usually do, we would usually divide it equally based on the duration. Unless you think that for activity A, you do not want to divide equally, you think that you would be heavier at the front end. Okay, so for example, you think that activity A, you would want to complete 80% at the front end. You would have more resources there, and then 20% later, then it's up to you. But in general, to make things easy, we divide it equally, assuming that we have similar resources throughout the duration of the activity. Okay, and once you have done that, okay, so how we are coming up, how can we come up with the S-curve is where we combine or we look into weekly cumulative or daily cumulative. Let's say we're talking about daily, okay. So for day 1, you have 50 ringgit. For day 2, you have 60 ringgit. For day 3, cumulative activity 30 ringgit. And for day 4, 20 ringgit. Okay, and in order for you to come up with the planned value of the activities, okay, so the entire project, this is the S-curve. Okay, so you will see that you have 50, 110, 140, 160. So this ultimately should be your total contract sum. Okay, so what we can observe from here, basically, you should be able to draw the entire plan value for your project. Okay, so you would have S curve as such. Okay, so hold on, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you will have your duration and you will have your cost. Okay, so week 1, you have 50, for example here. So week 2, 110, week 3, 140, and final basically 160. Okay, so you will get your S curve as such. Okay, so why or how can we make it as a function of plan value, earn value, and actual cost? Okay, for example, okay, let's say we are monitoring at week 3. Okay, so let's say we are monitoring at week 3. So we have gone through week 1, we have gone through week 2, we have gone through week 3. Okay, so what could be the planned value at week 3? So your planned value at week 3 would be 140. Okay, so meaning to say that at week 3, okay, in terms of cost, your spending should be around 140. Okay, so if I have spent something below, if let's say at week 3, I have spent. So how do we actually come up with the actual cost from here, actual value from here? This is where we make the changes. Okay, so this is what we plan. However, let's say you're talking about the actual, okay, so you are monitoring in actual basis. So let's say, for example, on the site for activity A, okay, for the first week, you have spent 50 ringgit. Okay, but on the site for the second week, for activity A, let's say you have spent 100 ringgit. Let's say. Okay, so hold on, let me just change the. Okay, so let's say on the site, you spend 100 ringgit. Okay, and for activity B, okay, so let's say on the site you have spent 20 and here you have spent 5. Okay, this is where we overrule, or we are not trying to overrule. We might create another sheet that actually highlights the actual. So your actual is similar, your network doesn't change, except that this value would change. So when you actually combine this value at week 3, you will see the difference. Okay, so whatever in black is the original value you actually got from the contract. Okay, so that is what, this is the graph that you're supposed to adhere to. But on the side, this is where you have the changes. Okay, so in terms of cost, you can change it as such. Okay, so let's say on the side is not 50, it is 100. So this is where you actually change your number and it will reflect whether your graph lays here or your graph lays here. Okay, so if there are changes as such, 100, 50, you see, 20 over 10, there will be deviation in your S-curve, the actual S-curve too. Okay, so that is where it's going to show you. So the means of calculating is the same. Okay, so you still have to get this in a graph form. You still have to get this in the actual S-curve form. Okay, so this is plan, your actual based on the figure that you actually attain from the site. So this is where you might get it above or below and so on. Okay, so one, you can get it based on cost. Okay, some people would associate how much you spend with the progress. So let's say it's supposed to be 50, okay, but I have spent 100 here. Okay, Does 100 mean I dah completed the project here? Can I say that? Okay, let's say budgeted as 50 kat sini. Okay, so let's say budgeted as 50. But on the side, okay, so when you observe, when you make the calculation, when you monitor that, you realize that for activity A kat sini, you have spent 100. Okay, $100 on site. Does that mean my progress is good?
Over budget.
Over budget. Tapi performance, in terms of work performance, is it good ke tak? In terms of progress, physical completion of your progress on site. What does it mean? It cannot mean anything kan? When it's only cost, then it's cost. The cost does not mean I have spent 100 ringgit. It shows that my performance is good. Betul. So in terms of performance, you cannot assume that I have spent more, I have completed the progress more. I have completed both of the progress in that week. You cannot be so sure based only on the cost. Okay, so when you are trying to address the schedule factor or progress factor, it should be based on, normally how we calculate is based on, we have to observe on the site and we have to find the percentage. So for example, okay, you have activity A budgeted at 50 ringgit. Okay, if I have completed 50% of the job, okay, which means I have completed basically 50%. Okay, so for example, activity A is 50 and 50. Okay, in order to get 100% of the project progress, you need to complete 50% here and 50% here. Okay, so let's say for activity A, I am monitoring kat hari kedua ni. Okay, for activity A, I'm monitoring here. So by right, okay, so for activity A at the second day, I should have completed 100% of activity A. Okay, if you go onto the site and you realize activity A belum habis, okay, so it has not been completed, you have only completed 50% of the work on day 2. So your progress will be 50% out of 100. Okay, so that is the earned value. The value that you've earned is only 50% out of the cost that has been budgeted for you. Okay, alright, so that is just basically a general idea lah. Okay, actual cost is actual cost. So let's just move on to the next one. I think you will get a better understanding from there. Okay, so hence the introduction to earned value system. So the earned value system basically is pretty straightforward. Okay, you only have 3 variables here. Okay, so the earned value is used to monitor the progress and compare accomplished work with the planned work. Okay, so you are basically comparing whatever you have planned with whatever you have actually performed. Okay, so there are several factors in the earned value. This is where you need to know by heart. Okay, so the first one is budgeted cost of the work schedule. Okay, so budgeted cost of the work schedule. So your planned value. Okay, so the next is budgeted cost of the work performed, earned value. And you have the third one, actual cost of the work performed, your actual cost. Okay, so you need to know these 3 elements, and other things are basically pretty straightforward, the calculation. Okay, so sometimes it will be used interchangeably. Okay, so when we talk about planned value, okay, so it will be the original S curve. Okay, so the S curve that you have attained and they have drawn from the original network diagram, and also the budgeted cost in the contract. Okay, so budgeted cost of the work schedule. Okay, so your original planned curve and so on. Next, what you can get, both of it, this one is based on how you're monitoring. This is based on your original contract and also network diagram. Okay, so this is considered sort of like a fixed schedule. This is where you can actually monitor whether to expedite, requirement to expedite if you have delay, or actually trying your best to reduce the budget, all depending on how well you are addressing the planned value, the planned item. Okay, so what you can monitor is basically in terms of the time performance and in terms of the cost performance. Okay, so for the time performance or for the progress performance, basically, it is what we call earned value. Budgeted cost of the work performed. Okay, so this is work schedule, this is work performed. Okay, so meaning to say that we are trying to see from a certain activity how much work you have actually done, and for that work how much budget has been has been allocated for it. Okay, so the earned value. Actual cost is how much you have spent on site. That one is pretty straightforward. Okay, so both of these could allow you to monitor the time factor and also the cost factor. Okay, so earned value takes the planned value or what you plan to do at the estimated cost, compare it against the earned value, okay, and also the actual cost. Okay, so the metrics provide information about schedule variance and cost variance. Okay, and finally at the end you should be able to get estimate at completion metrics. Okay, so but we'll go through it one by one later. Okay, right, so budgeted cost of the work schedule or your planned value is basically the amount of money. Okay, so the amount of money planned, budgeted at each time period in the project. Okay, so if we can recall the S-curve just now, we have duration, whether in weekly or daily, and we have the cost allocated at every interval. So that is the amount of budget for each of the duration. So it is determined by cost loading the CPM to determine distribution, so the S-curve. Okay. So actual cost is the amount of cost that has been spent. Okay, so this in your situation, if it's given in the exam or test question, the value must be given to you. So it should be given to you stating how much cost has been spent. So it is determined from accounting records, okay, so or the responsible party that keeps record of actual expenditure. If you're on site, it depends on the record, how much money you have spent for having the material, for spending on the laborers, workers, and so on. So that is from the accounts. And the next one is the budgeted cost of the work performed. Okay, so the earned value. So this is the amount of work earned, very important, earned based on the work that has been completed. Okay, so it is determined by multiplying the percent completed by the budgeted amount for the work. If you have completed 100% of the activity budget, so it will be 100% of the budgeted amount. Okay, so basically the percent complete or percent progress times the planned value, that will be your earned value kat sini. Okay, so this is what I've actually mentioned. Okay, so let's say this is the common S-curve that we actually have. Okay, so you have your planned value, and some organization might report based on the actual cost. So meaning to say from the sum that you have actually spent on site based on accounting. So from here, we can actually say the project is actually over budget here, okay, and actually under budget here. Okay, so but what does it say in terms of your progress? We can say in terms of cost progress. Okay, so your cost progress is pretty clear here. You have spent more than you should, and you're fine somewhere here around week 5. But moving forward, you have spent less than you should. Okay. However, what is more important is it does not represent the progress, your time progress too. So the progress of your project, Okay, so the production on site. So spending more, does it mean your progress is good? You're not sure. Okay, and spending less, does it mean your progress is good? You're not even sure juga. Unless you have something that indicates that is what happened. Okay, you spend more, but you have completed more activities than you actually should. So what we can see from this graph is where it lacks the progress. Okay, basically the time progress, the progress on site that we cannot observe. You can observe the cost, but you cannot observe the actual progress on site. So that is the current constraint. Okay, so what we can see, okay, so project tracking without earned value. Okay, so figure 1 shows the cumulative budget. Okay, so as a function of time. Okay, so it is labeled as planned value. It shows the cumulative actual cost. Okay, so through week 8. Okay. So to those unfamiliar with earned value, it might appear that this budget was over budget, okay, through week 4 and then under budget from week 6 to week 8. Okay, so however, what is missing is the understanding of how much work we have actually accomplished during the project. Okay, so this is what I've mentioned. We can know the cost, but what actually have been completed on site, because all this reporting, it is given as such. So you will not be bringing the client to the side and, okay, with that over budget, we have actually completed this much. No, this graph should speak by itself. Okay, so at this moment, it does not tell the actual progress on site to the client. Okay, so that is missing. Okay, all right, so if the project was actually completed at week 8, for example, okay, then the project would actually be very well under budget and well ahead of schedule. Okay, if on the other hand, if the project is only completed at week only 10% completed at week 8, okay, so the project is significantly over budget and behind schedule. So it really have to show the progress. So at this moment, it is just assuming. Okay, so probably we have completed, then obviously, so we are well ahead of the schedule, but we cannot conclude because it is only cost, but it does not show the performance. Okay, so what we actually intend to do in earned value is to have two variables representing properly the progress, the physical progress, and also the cost progress. Okay, so figure 2, okay, shows the earned value curve, okay, with the planned value. No matter what, it would be what we call, no matter what, it will be compared against the planned value. Whether it's earned value or whether it's actual cost later, it will be compared against the planned value. Okay, so the chart indicates that technical performance, okay, so the progress started more rapidly than planned, but slowed significantly fell behind. Okay, so if you are comparing earned value, or if you are talking about schedule, okay, so the comparison is between the earned value and planned value. Okay, so for example here, okay, so you have your planned value all the way. So meaning to say that week 6 until week 6, okay, so you can see your earned value higher than your planned value. Okay, and later on, your earned value is lower than your planned value. Okay, so from week 1, from week 6, it means that your activity is ahead of your planned value. Okay, so meaning to say that, okay, for activity for week 1, so the planned value for the activities are as such. Okay, so this is what have been planned for that activities. However, let's say on site, you have earned. Okay, so earned value is the budgeted cost of the work performed. Okay, so for the work that you have performed, this is the budget value. So meaning to say that you have performed way higher than what you have actually planned for. So you have to remember when we talk about earned value, budgeted cost for work performed. This one important. Okay, so for the work that you have performed, this is the budgeted cost for it. So meaning to say that you have actually performed more than you should. Okay, so the budgeted cost for the work that you have performed a lot higher than what you actually planned for. So meaning to say that at your site, you should have accomplished much more production than what you have actually planned. Okay, so this would mean you are ahead of time. Okay, here means you are right on time. Okay, so week 6 is where you are just on time. And moving forward, for some reason, you actually fell back from the schedule. Okay, so at week 8, you are supposed to complete, or the planned value for the activity to complete is such, but what you have performed on site is only valued as such. Your earned value is only as such. This is the amount of work that you have performed and the value of the work. So you're behind schedule. Okay. So as such. Okay, so that is actually on earned value against planned value. For activity with for activity in terms of cost, okay, for the cost factor, the difference is between earned value and actual cost. Okay, so actual cost is the cost that you have actually spent on site for the activities. Okay, and why we are comparing it with earned value is because we are comparing for the work performed. Okay, so let's say for activity for week 1, so this is the earned value, meaning to say that this is the work that you have performed and that is the budgeted cost for it. However, on site, whatever that you have performed, okay, you have actually spent this much. Okay, so it will give you comparison between the earned value and actual cost, the cost variance. Okay, so anything below the earned value for actual cost, it will be under budget, and anything above your earned value, okay, your actual cost, it will be over budget. Okay, so the comparison is basically as such. So when you put it in one graph, it could actually show you the difference or the performance based on time and also based on cost. Okay, so if you're considering the time factor, we will be competing, or we will be looking at planned value and earned value. Okay, so if we are talking about the time factor, okay, so we are basically talking about planned value and earned value. If we are looking at the performance of the cost factor, we are talking about earned value and actual cost. Okay, so the once you are trying to compare, or you're trying to create the progress for cost, it is between the actual cost and earned value. Time factor is between the earned value and planned value. Okay, so this is as such. Okay, so for example here, let's just have one example. Okay, so you have your S-curve. Okay, so all the way from here, you have your S-curve drawn. You have your duration until here. So your duration of project should end somewhere here. Okay, and this is your total cost. Let's say you are monitoring at this area. Okay, so let's say, you will monitor throughout the duration. Let's say you're monitoring halfway, okay, and you have identified that, okay, so this would be your planned spending. This will be a planned value. Okay, so you have it here. And on site, what you discover is you have actually spent this much. Okay, so if you can still recall, I did mention how you came up with this graph. You have to reconsider back in your Gantt chart. Okay, so week 1, how much you have spent, week 2, how much you have spent, and that would actually create a new graph either above or below the plan value, or is basically the same. So you need to like redo the network analysis with new figures that represent the actual data. Okay, so let's say on the data you gathered from finance, okay, so the accounts, and once you accumulate and everything, you get the finally at this week you have spent this much, okay, and also the earned value you have attained this much. Okay, so earned value is basically the budgeted cost for the work performed. Okay, if you have performed the same as what you have actually planned for, okay, so 100% performance based on what you require, you will end up here. Okay, however, this basically shows that your earned value, this is the value of the work that you have earned. Okay, so the budgeted cost for the work that you have performed. Okay, so your progress performance is here and your actual performance is here. Okay, from this comparison, what can we conclude from the cost factor? What can we say in terms of the cost factor? Are we overspending? Are we underspending? Or are we just nice?
Over.
Over, right? Okay, so it should be over. So your planned value at this time, you should only be spending this much. However, on the side, after you gather the data from finance, you have spent this much. Okay, so this shows overspending. Okay, so over budget in terms of cost. How about in terms of the progress? What you can conclude from here? Again? Late, right? Late, and then is delayed. Okay, so the progress is not as what you planned for. Okay, so you have planned to complete this much of work. This is your planned value. Okay, however, the work that you have performed kat side tu is only at this value. Supposedly, whatever that you have performed, the value should equate as such. Okay, however, on the side, the work that you have performed hanya bernilai macam ni je. Okay, so which means you are kind of behind the schedule. So the progress on the side is not as what you wanted as such. Okay, so it's behind schedule. Okay, good. So basically, for this topic, more or less that is what it is lah, basically. Okay, so you can say that you are behind schedule because your planned value is as such, but your earned value, the nilai of the work that you have performed, hanya bernilai itu je, behind schedule, and it is over budget. Okay, so oh yeah, just now I've actually compared the plan. Okay, so by right, your actual tu should be compared with earned value, yeah, bukan your planned value. Okay, so your budget is basically between your actual and your earned value, because this is the work that you perform and that is the budgeted cost for it. However, the work that you perform, this is the cost you have spent for it, so over budget. Okay, so let's have one activity here. Okay, so one simple example. Supposedly a project is in progress, okay, and as of today, the planned expenditure were to have been 500,000. Okay, so planned value is around 500,000. And suppose also that there were 5 tasks and the task had budget of 30, 100, 250, 100 and 20k respectively. So we have 5 activities with the budget given. Okay, so the actual cost for each of the tasks that has been worked on, okay, was 11, 120, 230, 105, 20. Okay, so these are the actual costs. These are the budgeted costs, and only tasks 1, 2, 3, 4 are complete. Okay, so what are the budgeted costs for the work schedule, plan value, actual costs, and earned value for those activities? So let's try to have it in one shot. what do you call? Elaboration. Okay, so what would be the plan value? For these activities?
100,000.
500,000.
100,000. Okay, so you can either see that here. Okay, so the planned expenditure were to have been 500,000, or you can add on from 30 plus 100 plus 250 plus 100 and plus 20 should get you also 500,000 planned value. Okay, so what will be your actual cost? So your actual cost of the task that will work on. Okay, so you have performed these activities and this is how much you spend. So it should be 11,000 plus 120,000 plus 230 plus 105 and plus 20, and that will give you
486.
456
86.
486. Hmm. 486. Okay, so this is the actual cost that you have spent for the activities that you have worked on. And your earned value shows you the budgeted cost for the work that you have performed. Okay, so we have to see where are the progress. So the progress shows as such. Okay, so the progress shows that task 1, task 2, task 3 and task 4 are complete and task 5 belum complete. Okay, so we need to know what are the budgeted costs for all these task 1 to task 4. Okay, so the budgeted cost for that will be 30 plus 100 plus 250 plus 100. So this is the progress. Okay, so only these 4 activities have completed, and what is the budgeted cost for it? That is the budgeted cost for it. Okay, so what is the value? For A0 kot. Okay, so what we can conclude from here is basically we could compare the cost factor. Okay, and we can look into the time of progress. Okay, so in comparison for the time factor, okay, so you should have the planned value at this point of time, you should have completed 500,000. Okay, but what happened on site, you have only able to earn yourself completed 480,000. So it's clearly behind schedule. Okay, so your progress is not as well as you have intended it to be. And in terms of cost factor, okay, so for the activities that you have completed, okay, this is the budgeted cost for it. However, on the side, for the activities you have completed, you have spent this much. Okay, so you're actually 6,000 ahead of what has been budgeted. So basically, it shows that you are actually over budget. Okay, so in this simple scenario, you can see that you are behind schedule and you are over budget as well. Okay, so basically it's a negative performance for you in terms of cost and in terms of the time factor. Okay, so these are basically the explanation. All right. Okay, so in simple way to represent your findings, you can actually place it in terms of variance or place it in terms of index, okay, index. Okay, so in terms of variance, okay, so you can actually have it in cost variance. So, okay, cost variance equal to your earned value minus your actual cost. Okay, so cost variance equals to your earned value minus actual cost. Schedule variance equals to your earned value minus your planned value. Okay, so hence in terms of variance, you should be able to have more than 0 equals 0 less than 0. Okay, so your value, you should be able to get more than 0 equals 0 less than 0. Okay, if you attain more than 0, what does it mean in terms of your costs? Are we over budget? Are we just nice or are we under budget? If we attain a value more than 0.
Under budget.
Under budget, betul ke? Let's assume this. Okay, so for example, your cost variance kat sini. Let's say your earned value, okay, is 50 minus your actual cost 30. Okay, so 50 is basically the budgeted cost for the work that you have performed. And for the same work that you have performed, you have only spent 30. What does it mean? Over budget or under budget?
Under budget.
Under budget. Okay, so it should be under budget. Okay, so your earned value, the work that you have performed, the budget is 50. Okay, but the same work that you have performed, you have only spent 30. So you are actually under budget. Okay, and equals to 0, basically the work that you perform 50 and you actually spend also 50 on the work. So sama. So that you'll be just on budget lah. So if it's less than 0, okay, so imagine that your earned value is 30. The budgeted work that you have performed 30. Tapi the same work that you perform though, you have spent 50. Okay, and creates negative part here. So it will be over the budget lah. So by right, you are only given 30 to spend for that work that you perform, but you have spent 50 on the side. Okay, so over budget. Okay, so similarly in terms of schedule, okay, so for variance, you should have something of more than 0. Nature of equals to 0 and less than 0. Okay, so what would it mean in terms of your schedule? So if it's more than 0, so what do we mean? Okay, so what does it mean if you have a variance of more than 0? What does it mean to your schedule? Ahead of schedule? On schedule?
Ahead.
Behind schedule?
Ahead.
Ahead. You should have ahead of schedule, betul. Okay, so ahead of schedule. Okay, so let's put it in perspective. So let's say your earned value, okay, for ahead of schedule, let's say you have a 90. The budgeted for the work that you have performed. So meaning to say that if you monitor on site, you see that the work that you have performed, the budgeted cost for it is 90. However, what you have planned for that duration is only 50. Okay, so meaning to say, let's say we are monitoring at week 1. Okay, so at week 1, you are only required to complete a job worth 50,000. Tapi on the side, you have completed a job worth 90,000. So much higher value. Okay, so cost of the work that you have performed, budgeted cost is much higher. So it shows that you are ahead of schedule. Okay, so on dot will be on schedule lah. So meaning to say that the planned value of the activity is 50, and what you observe on site, the value of the work is also 50. So just on time, okay, on schedule. But on the other end, okay, so you have less than 0. So let's say the planned value is 50 or 90 here. Let's say this is the planned value. For a certain time that you monitor, the value of the work that you should perform is 90. However, on site, the work that you perform is only worth 50, for example. Okay, so once you observe on site, the activity yang dibuat tu is only worth 50. So that will give you negative. Okay, so it shows that you are behind schedule. Okay, so you should be able to get these different values and what this value means to your progress. So because that is the thing that you want to report. Okay, so you can represent it in variance, you can represent it in index. Okay, so either way it should give you the performance tu lah. But when you're reporting dalam your test or for your exam ke apa benda, you should report both of it. Report also variance, report also index. Okay, cuma index ni the difference is we are talking about one lah index kan, more than one, equals one, less than one. Okay, so same goes to the shadow performance, more than one, equals one, and you should get value less than one. Okay, so for example, okay, so let's say your cost performance index, okay, will be your earned value divided by your planned actual cost. Selalu tu ni. So cost performance index equals to earned value divided by actual cost. Schedule performance index will be your earned value divided by your planned value. Okay, so similarly from here, okay, so if you have a value of earned value of let's say 50, okay, and your actual cost is 20, okay, so what does it mean in terms of your cost? Are we over budget? Are we under budget?
Under budget.
Under budget, okay, so which means more than one you should get under budget. Okay, so the answer you get here, you'll be similar at the top. Okay, so it's easy, basically you can just put a figure to understand that whether it is over budget or it is under budget. So equals to one, basically it will be just on dot on the cost, and less than one will give you over budget. Okay, so over budget because let's say the work that you perform is 20 and actual cost that you have spent is 90. Okay, so obviously it's very much over budget. Similarly on the schedule factor. Okay, so your earned value divided by planned value. So if your earned value is bigger than your planned value, it should give you more than one, and that will give your progress to be fine. Okay, so again ahead of schedule, on schedule, behind schedule. Okay, so you get your variance and index here. Okay, so CPI, SPI, cost performance index and schedule performance index. Cost performance index, schedule performance index. Okay, so all right, so this is basically another example. Okay, so typically you can see that shadow variance is the difference between your planned value and your earned value. Okay, so the brown one, and your cost variance will be the difference between your actual cost and your earned value. Okay, so that will give you that. Okay, so from here, basically, let's say this is the summary of that. Okay, so you have project A, okay, has a CPI greater than 1. This shows that the project has been earning value faster than it has been acquiring cost. Okay, so your cost performance index is greater than 1 and has a schedule performance index less than 1. Okay, so although actual costs are low, task 1 is behind schedule. So the project has not earned as much. Okay, so for example, project A, okay, so you have the value of basically CPI more than 1. So meaning to say that it is under budget, but at the same time, the schedule variance is lower than 1. Okay, so it shows that you are behind schedule. You might be performing well on the cost, okay, but you are actually behind schedule. So meaning to say that your cost is under based on what you have actually performed, meaning to say that you did not spend more than what you should. However, in terms of schedule, you are not doing that well as well. Okay. So the next part of earn value is basically forecasting. It is just using back the number that you attained earlier. Okay, so in earn value, another part of it is the whereby you can forecast how much you would actually deviate from the original budget. Okay, the terms that you will be using for forecast, one, budget at complete. Again? Okay, so the term that you're going to use for forecasting, one, it will be budget at completion. Okay, so original project estimate, or basically this is what it means by the total project cost. Okay, next one is ETC, estimate to complete. Okay, so estimate to complete is basically budget at completion minus earn value divided by cost performance index. Okay, and the next one you can gather is estimate at completion, EAC. Okay, so actual cost plus the value you attain from estimate to complete. Okay, so estimate to complete is how much more cost that you need to pay. Okay, so that's why we minus earn value divided by CPI. And estimate at completion is how much total cost you will need to pay based on your current progress because you have taken ETC. Okay, right. So let's go to the example. Hold on here. So far, any question before we go on to the example of it? Tak ada eh? Okay, let's move on to one example. Okay, so provide an earn value analysis to evaluate the progress of the sewer water line project. Original budget is 147,500. Okay, so this will be a BAC lah. Okay, and the project is scheduled to be completed in 94 working days. A status report after 10 working days into the project includes the following information. Okay, so you have activity 10, 100% completed as scheduled. You have activity 20, 100% completed with the actual cost. You have activity 30, 100% completed as scheduled with the actual cost. Okay, and the plan value, earn value, actual cost is already given to you. So it makes your life much easier. If not, you will need to identify what is the earn value, what is the plan value based on the question. For this one, it has been given to you. So budgeted cost of the work plan value, actual cost, and also budgeted cost of the work schedule. Budgeted cost of the work plan perform. So I suppose that will be perform. Okay. So okay, so by right, the first one, budgeted cost of the work perform, EV. Okay, actual cost of the work perform, actual cost, budgeted cost for the work schedule, plan value. And then you have your BSC, the total project cost. Okay. The budgeted cost of the work scheduled, performed, shown are the same value as shown on the because activity were all completed. Okay, so typically what we can actually right away observe from here is where the earned value and your planned value is the same value, meaning to say that you have completed the project as you have planned, the activities as you have planned. Okay, so because what you have planned is similar to what you have performed, the value of the work too, so sama. On another dimension of cost, okay, so between the earned value and actual cost. Okay, so the work that you have performed, this is the value that is budgeted 7,006, but on the side, the work that you perform, you have spent 100 ringgit higher. Okay, 100 ringgit more than you should. So you are slightly over the budget. Okay, so typically you can actually summarize from here. Okay, but what you need to do is basically you need to calculate or you need to portray the in calculation. So deviation, okay, so cost variance will be your earned value minus your actual cost, you will have negative. Okay, so it shows that you are over budget. And then you have the shadow variance. Okay, so your earned value minus your planned value equals to 0. So progressing just nice. Okay, calculate also your cost performance index, CPI. Okay, so your earned value divide by your actual cost. That will give you below 1. Okay, so it shows poor cost performance over budget. And schedule performance index, which is 1.0, just nice. Okay, so you should get similar result. Okay, either you're talking about variance or index, you should have similar over budget or under budget result from there. Okay, so next thing is forecast cost. Okay, so estimate to complete equals to your total project cost minus your earned value divide by the CPI you have gathered earlier kat sini. Okay, so you've gathered your CPI from here. So place it in perspective there. Okay, so estimate to complete, you need to have this much of budget to complete your project. Okay, remaining budget. Okay, so the remaining cost to complete your project is like that much. And how much do you expect to complete in total with the current progress? Estimate at completion. So actual cost that you have spent plus the estimate to complete kat sini, 141. So that will give you to complete with the current progress, it will occur total cost of 149,443. And your total budget, original budget is 147. Okay, so you could see that you would be spending at least 2,000 higher than what you have actually intended for total project cost. If you do not rectify or if you do not address the current budget performance kat sini. Okay, so based on the current budget, based on the actual cost that you have spent, you will be spending at least 2,000 more than you should. Okay, so at least you could foresee that, okay, what you need to do to bring the total cost back to here. Okay, so that is on forecasting. All right, so far any question? Okay, tak on that?
Okay, madam.
All right, the next one is basically, okay, so you're given project, let's see the answer given to you there. Okay. All right, the next one, next example is basically, let's say is given task 1, task 2, task B, 3 as a total of project A. Okay, dapat the same thing tak? 350 plus 500 plus 850. Okay, so you should get 1,700. Okay, and your planned value is basically 635. Okay, so task 1, task 2, task 3. And percentage complete for project A is 34.4%. And your actual cost that you have spent is around 570. Okay, So based on this, okay, so you should see that, okay, task 1, 2, 3, it has actually been represented as project. Okay, so the progress has been accumulated to portray in terms of project. And currently at this stage, the percentage of completion is 34.4%. Okay, so from here, you should be able to get the plan value of 635. You should be able to get the earn value of 34.4% times with 635. And your actual cost that you have spent is actually 570. Okay, so from here, you should actually 34.4% of the total. Okay, all right, I got it. Okay, so basically what has been given here is the plan value at this point. And you have been given the percentage complete 34.4% of the total. So which is from the total sum of 1,700. Sometimes if you look into question, okay, so you need to also check 34% of the current plan value or 34% of the total progress. Okay, but at this question, it is 34% of the total progress. So we need to actually, there are two ways of looking in terms of progress. One, against that what we actually plan for at that stage of time, or one more, the progress actually represents the entire progress, the entire, the whole project as a whole. Okay, so I think from this question is basically looking at 34% representing the entire project. Okay, so not the value of plan value. So depending on the question. Okay, so your earned value here represents you have completed 34% of the entire project. That showcase around 584. And your planned value at that junction is around 635. Okay, and your actual cost is 570. Okay, so 570. So once you can gather this, the other things are pretty straightforward. Okay, so even from here, you could actually see that your plan value is 635. Earn value at 584. Okay, so you should be able to know that you are basically behind schedule. And in terms of cost, okay, so your actual cost is 570, but the work that you have performed is actually 584. Okay, so you are actually under budget. Okay, so you have actually spent 584 for the work, but you have only spent 570. So it gives you a positive value in terms of cost, a negative value in terms of your schedule. And from there, you should be able to get your index, which is positive, your schedule, which is, sorry, not positive, your index, which is more than 1, and your schedule, which is less than 1. Okay, and from there, you should be able to create this forecast. Okay, so estimate to complete. So BAC minus your earned value, divide by your cost performance index. So that should give you 1,082. And this is estimated left for you to complete. Okay, so this is the cost. And how much do you expect to spend at the end with the current progress? Okay, so actual cost plus with your ETC, that will give you 1650. Okay, and your original budget is 1,700. Okay, so it is forecasted that you will spend lower than your budget because your CPI is positive. So because you are currently under budget, and by right with your current progress, it is forecasted that you complete your project more or less less than the original budget. Okay, all right. So far, any question on this? So for tomorrow, we will have we will do an example or basically exercise on earned value. So I'll try to get some question from the apa tu past year exam question so that we can have at least a proper understanding. I have one question which is quite, for me, that is by far the toughest question on by far is the trickiest question on earn value. So maybe we can try to solve that together. Okay. All right. So far, any question on this? And for earn value itu je. So that is the only thing you need to know, and it's more on understanding what is planned value, earn value, actual cost when you are given certain scenarios. Okay, so it's just the application or implementation from there. Okay, any question?
No, doctor.
Tak ada ya.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there are no questions, okay, so I will upload the recording of the what you call the S-curve, and try to get that done if possible by tomorrow sebelum class. Tomorrow our class will be evening, and for tomorrow we will conduct, or we will do an exercise on today's lecture. Okay, so that you can enhance your understanding from there. Okay. All right. So if there are no other questions, then I think we can stop the class here.